If you've walked into a dealership lately and wondered why prices still look frozen while the used market keeps falling, you're not imagining it. Riders are hesitating. Auctions are resetting. Real values are dropping in plain sight. Yet inside the showroom, the sticker barely moves. That disconnect feels wrong, and it is. What most riders don't realize is that dealers aren't holding prices out of confidence or stubbornness. They're trapped by a system that locks inventory in place and punishes even small price cuts. Today, we're breaking down the rule that forces dealers to pretend yesterday's prices still make sense. The $8,000 gap exposing the whole structure. And what happens when those numbers can no longer be propped up? Once you understand this, price tags will never look the same again. The price paradox riders are seeing everywhere. Walk into any dealership today and you feel the tension before you even touch a bike. The tags on the new models sit there like museum plaques, untouched and unmoved, even though everyone knows the used market has been sliding for more than a year. Riders see bikes selling privately for thousands less, yet the showroom sticker does not flinch. It does not wobble. It does not blink. The first reaction is always the same. Something must be wrong with the data. Maybe those cheaper listings are junk. Maybe they are salvage units. Maybe they are outliers. But a few minutes studying the marketplace tells a different story. The gap between what real riders are paying on the street and what dealers are asking on the floor has widened into a canyon. The surprising part is not the price difference itself. Markets rise and fall. That is normal. The shock comes from how frozen those showroom numbers are, even when the rest of the motorcycle world is shifting under everyone's boots. Riders who have been around long enough to remember the downturns of the past know what a normal correction looks like. Prices usually soften, negotiations open up, dealers trim a little, manufacturers offer rebates. But this time, none of that is happening. The line is not bending, and it leaves riders shaking their heads, wondering how a bike that sells for one number at auction can sit at a much higher number behind a dealership window without anyone adjusting course. It feels unnatural because it is unnatural. The price you see is not responding to real demand at all. It is responding to something hidden, something internal, something most riders never hear about because it never appears on the tag or the spec sheet. You can sense that there is a force behind the scenes holding that price up like a jack under a frame. And the longer you stare at the numbers, the more you feel that invisible pressure. The mystery here is not the decline of the market. The mystery is why the showroom refuses to acknowledge it. And that mystery opens the door to the next truth. The first clue sits under the surface of every dealership floor, and it starts with who actually owns those bikes. The hidden truth about who really owns dealer inventory. Most riders assume the dealership owns the motorcycles sitting on the floor. They assume the shop pays the manufacturer directly, keeps the bikes in stock, and profits when the machines roll out the door. It sounds simple, and it used to be closer to the truth decades ago when shops were smaller, inventory was lighter, and sales cycles were predictable. But today's dealership world runs on a completely different system, one that would surprise any rider who has never seen the business from the inside. The cold reality is this: the dealership does not own most of the bikes it displays. The bank does. Here is the basic version, explained the same way you would talk about it in a garage. A dealership wants to stock a certain number of units for the season. Instead of writing a massive check to the manufacturer, it taps into a financing arrangement that allows those bikes to be placed on the floor without paying up front. On paper, the dealership holds the machines. In practice, the bikes are collateral sitting under the bank's watchful eye. Every unit has a cost attached, a timer running, and a clear legal chain showing that the shop is not the true owner until the bike is finally sold. This structure changes everything. It changes how inventory moves. It changes how pricing behaves. It changes what a dealer can and cannot do when customers walk in looking for a discount. It even shapes how the entire industry reacts when market conditions shift. And once you understand that the machines on the floor are not fully the dealer's property, you start to understand why the price tag cannot move freely. The value on the sticker is only part of the story. The ownership underneath it is the part riders rarely see. And that unseen ownership is the start of the real pressure. Ownership is only the surface layer. The real problem starts when time gets involved and every month tightens the margin. If you want more breakdowns like this, leave a comment with what you've seen locally. Liking keeps this conversation moving, and subscribing keeps you informed as the system shows its cracks. The clock that eats dealerships alive. Inside every dealership office, there is a quiet timer running, even though riders never hear it. The bikes sitting on the floor may look calm, but behind the scenes, each one carries a cost that grows heavier with every passing month. This has nothing to do with market value or resale conditions. This is not about how many riders are buying or selling. This is about the weight of time itself. When a dealership brings a unit onto the floor through financing, the clock starts immediately, and that clock never stops. The longer the bike sits, the more expensive it becomes for the dealer to keep it there. This steady increase is not dramatic on day one. It is barely noticeable in month one. But as the calendar turns, that weight builds. It pushes on inventory managers, it pushes on accounting staff, and eventually it pushes on the entire operation. A bike that sits too long becomes a financial anchor. Not because its value changed, but because its presence costs money every single month it remains unsold. That pressure fills back offices with tension that most riders never witness. Techs in the service bay may not see it. Customers on the showroom floor certainly do not see it. But the staff behind the counter feels it like a slow tightening around the throat. Time punishes every unsold unit, tightening margins and forcing hard choices. A steady price tag may not signal stubbornness, but the silent pressure of the calendar. Dealerships that look confident outside often battle deadlines, inside long before any rider walks through the door. Time doesn't just strain dealers, it distorts the market. And that distortion is where the $8,000 gap quietly takes shape. Where the $8,000 trap actually comes from. To understand the trap, you have to look at the difference between two worlds. One world is the polished showroom, where prices stay firm, lights stay bright, and every bike sits clean and ready. The other world is the wholesale market, where motorcycles trade hands for what they are truly worth in real economic terms. These two worlds used to stay fairly close together. The spread between them was manageable. But in recent seasons, riders, analysts, and buyers at auctions have watched that gap widen into a gulf. In the wholesale lanes, bikes move for lean numbers, driven by supply, demand, and actual bidding. Buyers know what sells. They know what sits. They know how far a machine will have to travel before finding a new owner. Nothing is padded. Nothing is softened. A motorcycle brings what the crowd decides it is worth in that moment. And lately, those numbers have been far lower than what anyone sees on a dealership tag. That difference can stretch into the thousands, and it often hovers around the kind of gap that leaves riders stunned when they compare notes. That widening gap is only the beginning of what the rest of the industry is now being forced to confront. When the market tightens like this, the smart move is controlling what you can. I've put links below to the tools and gear I personally rely on. Nothing trendy, just equipment that still works when dealerships don't. The rule that prevents dealers from cutting even $1. Most riders believe a dealer can shave a little off the sticker whenever they feel like it. That idea comes from the old days when shops were simpler, margins were looser, and a handshake deal could bridge the gap between asking price and riding price. But today, the dealer's hands are tied long before a customer ever steps across the threshold. The moment a motorcycle arrives on the floor through financing, the rules of the agreement lock into place. That agreement states, in plain, legal terms, that when the bike sells, The dealer must repay the exact invoice amount to the lender. Not an adjusted amount, not a market value number, the exact figure. This creates a hard wall around pricing that no amount of negotiation can break. This is why a dealer who appears firm on price is not always being difficult. They are following a contract that leaves no margin for generosity. Even if they want to help a loyal customer, they cannot create a discount without taking a personal loss. Many writers misunderstand that moment at the negotiation table, believing the dealer is holding out for profit, when in reality, the dealer is protecting themselves from a guaranteed negative balance. The agreement is mechanical and unforgiving. Once the bike is financed into inventory, the price becomes fixed in a way that feels unnatural to anyone who remembers the old style of motorcycle buying. Locked pricing forces dealers to adjust perception instead of numbers. That's when inventory starts disappearing from plain sight. The bikes dealers do not want you to see. Walk through the front doors of most dealerships, and you will see clean floors, lined rows, and bikes arranged like a showroom at a trade event. Everything looks neat, intentional, and precise. What you do not see is the second world behind the scenes where bikes sit under covers, in storage trailers, or even off-site entirely. These machines form what many staff quietly refer to as ghost inventory. They are real units, financed units, but hidden units. Their purpose is simple. If a lender representative walks through the front door, they should see a fresh, appealing lineup, not a collection of aging motorcycles that have been sitting far too long. Backlot staff know the dance well. They move bikes when the lender is expected. They shift units into temporary storage when managers want the floor to look lighter and newer. They keep the main area polished while the older inventory waits out of sight. Riders who trust their eyes miss the deeper truth. The floor is curated, not complete. The dealership is not lying about what they have, but they are shaping what they want others to see. And that shaping becomes even more intense when pressure arrives from the manufacturer itself. Hiding inventory only buys time. Upstream, manufacturers keep pushing new units into an already stressed system. Why manufacturers keep shipping new models into a drowning market? Dealers may struggle to move last year's stock, but the truck from the manufacturer keeps arriving like clockwork. New models roll off the ramp regardless of market conditions. Riders sometimes assume dealers order these shipments willingly, hoping for a surge in sales. The truth is more complicated. A dealership that wants to keep its franchise agreement in good standing must accept a certain number of units each cycle. These allocations are not mere suggestions. They are requirements tied to agreements that dealers sign when they join the network. Declining too many shipments risks penalties or even the loss of the franchise altogether. This forced flow of inventory hits hardest when the market softens. A dealer might already have a back room full of units that have overstayed their welcome. Yet another truck arrives carrying fresh models the dealer is obligated to accept. These shipments cannot be refused without consequences. Most manufacturers design their agreements to maintain brand presence, production volume, and showroom representation. That means the burden passes directly to the dealer, whether or not buyers are walking in with wallets ready. While manufacturers control the incoming flow, another force arrives unpredictably, and its arrival decides the fate of many dealerships. The audit day that ends a dealership overnight. When a lender schedules an audit, the temperature inside a dealership changes instantly. An audit is not a casual check-in. It is a precise inspection designed to confirm that every financed motorcycle is present, accounted for, and valued correctly. The auditor arrives with a list of identification numbers, a clipboard, and the authority to demand explanations for anything that does not match the records. Staff walk the floor and the back areas with the auditor, locating each machine and verifying its status. The process is quiet, methodical, and unforgiving. If a bike is missing, miscategorized, or relocated without proper paperwork, questions begin. If too many units have aged beyond what the lender considers healthy, warnings follow. If discrepancies stack up, the lender can move beyond warnings and into action. They hold the power to reduce or terminate the dealership's financing line. Without that line, the dealership cannot receive new units, cannot retain its current stock, and cannot operate as a functional business. It is not a gradual decline. It is immediate. Once these mechanisms are in motion, the impact spreads far beyond the dealership walls, shaping the collapse that comes next, where the collapse hits first. Small-town dealerships have always walked a narrow line. They rely on a smaller customer base, shorter riding seasons, and a community that often knows every salesperson by name. These stores survived for decades through loyalty, reputation, and the steady rhythm of riders who trusted their local shop more than any big city power dealer. But when the pressure in the market tightened, these small operations were the first to feel the ground shift under their boots. With fewer walk-ins and limited local demand, even a slight slowdown in motorcycle interest cut straight through their margins. Many of these stores were anchored by long-time owners who grew up in the same towns they served. They sponsored charity rides, hosted barbecues, and offered quick fixes that kept riders rolling. When the financial climate hardened, those same shops found themselves carrying inventory they could not move and, facing expenses they could no longer offset. A single slow month might be manageable. A slow quarter could be survived with grit. But a string of slow seasons became an impossible weight. And when that weight settled, the lights in these stores began flickering for the last time. As these small towns lose their anchors, another force arrives every year that pushes weakened dealerships to the edge. The winter season that finishes weakened dealers. Every rider knows winter slows things down, but for a dealership already struggling, those cold months do more than slow the market. They stop it. From November through February, walk-ins drop to a trickle, test rides vanish, and accessory sales fall sharply. The riding community shifts indoors, leaving showroom floors quiet enough to hear every conversation in the building. For many dealers, winter is a stretch of time that demands patience and reserves. When those reserves are thin, the season becomes a threat rather than an inconvenience. Seasonal staff usually feel the tension first. Hours get cut. Service work shrinks. The shop that buzzed with activity during summer becomes a warehouse that needs to be warmed and maintained without much income coming through the door. Mechanics who counted on winter tune-ups see fewer bikes roll in. Salespeople who thrived on summer energy find themselves standing beside rows of machines with nobody to talk to. The dealership does not collapse from a single storm or a single freeze. It collapses from a long, silent stretch where no business comes in to balance the weight of staying open. And yet, even when winter ends, what comes next is no longer the reliable rebound dealerships once counted on. Why spring no longer saves the motorcycle market? There was a time when spring acted like a reset button for the entire industry. As soon as the temperature rose, riders filled the showrooms, eager for new seasons, new gear, and new machines. Dealers could count on that energy. Sales would spike, inventory would clear, and the previous winter's worries would fade. But those days have changed. The spring surge that once rescued struggling shops now arrives weaker, slower, and less predictable. Rider habits have shifted. Many longtime motorcyclists already own the bikes they love and see no reason to replace them often. Younger riders enter the market at a slower pace, and when they do, they tend to search for practical machines on the used market instead of stepping into showrooms. Demographics play a part as well. The generation that grew up wrenching and riding through every season is aging, and the new generation does not share the same buying cycles or brand loyalty. Spring no longer guarantees the rush that once kept dealerships alive. When the weather, the buyers, and the patterns all shift, the last force that reveals the truth is the one that comes from the financial side. When banks liquidate. The final stage of the fallout appears when Lenders decide to take control of the motorcycles sitting in a failed or closing dealership. Once that decision is made, the machines no longer sit behind glass with polished chrome and showroom lighting. They move into the world of wholesale liquidation, where sentiment and sticker prices hold no power. Banks do not negotiate, they do not soften numbers. They send the bikes to auction houses where the only thing that matters is how much buyers are willing to pay at that moment. The process is remarkably straightforward. The units arrive with basic documentation, sometimes with the battery removed or the fuel drained, and they are lined up for inspection. Wholesale buyers walk through, note condition, and calculate their bidding strategies. When the auction begins, the numbers rise only as far as competition requires. Many bikes sell within seconds. The hammer comes down, and that figure becomes the real price of the motorcycle in the current market. No showroom gloss, no financing. Incentives, no emotional sales pitch. Just metal, mileage, and demand. Liquidation doesn't stay local. Once it starts, manufacturers read it as a warning and begin pulling levers out of sight to limit further exposure. How major motorcycle brands are quietly rewriting their playbook. When the market tightens, the first instinct is to blame the dealers. But the truth runs deeper. At the highest levels of the major motorcycle brands, the strategy is shifting in ways the average rider never sees. Production is no longer a steady rhythm. It rises and falls with surgical precision as manufacturers try to avoid flooding a soft market with units they know dealers cannot handle. Some factories reduce shifts. Others shut down specific lines for weeks at a time. These moves are not publicized, but industry analysts can see the pattern. When supply lines slow, it means the industry felt the hit long before riders noticed. Territories are shifting as well. Brands that once believed every small town needed a storefront now question whether that old map still makes sense. Some regions consolidate into larger districts, leaving smaller communities without representation. The larger stores absorb the customer base, though not without strain. Behind closed doors, executives acknowledge that a leaner network may become the new normal. Corporate decisions stay invisible until towns feel them. When that happens, regulation follows. The political and regulatory shockwaves no one saw coming. When dealerships close, the effects ripple into city halls and state capitals far faster than most riders realize. A lost dealership means lost tax revenue, fewer jobs, and quieter roads. Legislators respond when those consequences pile up in their districts. Credit reform becomes a recurring topic in committee rooms, with lawmakers debating whether lenders should adjust their practices to prevent sudden shutdowns. Some argue for tighter oversight. Others push for clearer disclosures so towns know how vulnerable their local stores truly are. Franchise laws come under scrutiny as well. Representatives from rural regions ask whether manufacturers should maintain obligations to the communities they have served for decades. Lobbyists argue that a business must retain the freedom to restructure for survival. Opponents counter that communities deserve stability when they invest in local dealerships. Hearings stretch late into the evening, while both sides fight to define the future rules of the industry. Yet, while politics focuses on policy, the real human cost lands hardest on the people who kept these shops running. The skilled hands being lost. A dealership is more than a showroom. Its backbone is the service department, home to the technicians who spent years building the kind of mechanical intuition that no textbook can teach. When a dealership shuts down or scales back, those hands become casualties of a shrinking landscape. These are seasoned professionals who can diagnose a carburetor issue by ear or rebuild a touring engine without hesitation. Losing them is not like losing a cashier or a seasonal worker. It is losing a craft. Parts counters feel the hit as well. Staff members who knew every gasket, bolt, and bracket by memory find themselves searching for new employment in towns where motorcycle shops rarely multiply. Some move to larger dealerships miles away. Others leave the industry entirely. Riders may not notice the absence immediately, but over time, the lack of skilled technicians becomes a real problem. Independent shops pick up some of the slack, though they face their own challenges with rising costs and limited space. And with so many forces reshaping the landscape, riders face a new market that demands a different kind of awareness. The road ahead. The motorcycle world is entering a phase where caution and timing matter more than ever. Prices will not follow the predictable cycles older riders remember. Some seasons may bring attractive deals as lenders clear repossessed units. Other seasons may hold firm as manufacturers tighten production. The best opportunities will favor riders who watch the trends carefully, rather than those who walk into a showroom expecting familiar rhythms. Patience becomes an advantage, especially when market corrections expose real values. Buying patterns will spread out. Riders who once upgraded every few years now keep their machines longer. The used market may show pockets of strong deals, but those deals will not appear uniformly. As dealer networks shrink, certain regions will experience scarcity, while others offer more choices than they have buyers. This uneven landscape rewards riders willing to travel or search beyond their home territory. The future may feel unfamiliar, but it is not a mystery. It is a road with clear markers for anyone willing to read them and ride with intention. This $8,000 trap isn't about greed, it's about a system that leaves dealers with no room to move and riders paying the price. If you've noticed frozen pricing, dealer closures, or growing gaps between private sales and showroom tags, drop your experience in the comments. Those ground-level details help riders see what's coming before it hits their town. Hitting like keeps this kind of straight, experience-driven breakdown visible, and subscribing ensures you stay informed as this market continues correcting. Knowledge is leverage, and right now, leverage matters.